Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Maximo, for the introduction and all the support you have shown in the last 10 years to our research on trade. And basically, this book is about, yes, what we have done in 10 years. And as we are going to discuss today, and as you will see if you look at the book, to some extent, we may have done more than trade negotiators in the last 10 years, because not a lot of things have happened. But still, we have a lot of things to learn from what has happened and what has not happened. So, as you see, this book tries to bring together different pieces of research focusing on agriculture, development, and the global trading system. But of course, we are not just looking at agricultural issues because some countries will export agricultural goods in exchange of industrial goods. So you don't want to be just too narrow in your approach. And that's also the big challenge of the global trading system, to combine the interests and the constraints of different players, different sectors, and different countries. And we are going to dig into these challenges through this book. First, I want to make it clear that even if agriculture is not the most integrated sector in the globalization, and this has started lately mainly because most of the policies affecting agriculture were excluded from trade negotiation for nearly 50 years, from the beginning of the GATT in 1947 up to the conclusion of the Uruguay round in 1995. We have not seen the global discipline applied to this sector like on other sectors. The market force, but also some policy reform coming from the Uruguay round, has helped to increase the role of global trade in providing food security to 7 billion people. So on my slide, you see the share of calories that are traded internationally. 40 years ago, we had basically just 10% of the calorie traded internationally, when today we have double this share. And of course, why trade is beneficial. So economists can tell you a lot of nice story, but it's a very pragmatic one. We don't do trade because we like trade, but because we have to. Because where the potential to produce, and typically for agricultural goods, you need water, land, and so on, and where the consumer are located, is two different places. And this from the dawn of time, as soon as we have cities, we need to move food from the countryside to cities. And of course, over time, people have started to draw borders. But this mere reality is still here. You have different localization of where you can produce goods efficiently and where you want to consume it. And this is about trade. And I will say that in the last 30 years, we have seen this acceleration of international trade, this globalization, and we have achieved incredible economic growth and incredible performance in terms of reducing poverty and hunger globally. The world has never seen so much opulence in its history, and never seen so much increase in a short period of time, and I will tell you a few about this. But this has been realized because goods have been able to move across borders, ideas have been able to move across borders, technology has been able to move across borders, linked to investment. And of course, some are purely privately driven, so it's market forces, but also we have seen international aid, cooperation, the CGIAR is part of this, transferring technology to some part of the world that will not get it just through market forces. But all this bundle is globalization, and we want to make it work efficiently and work for everyone. This is one of the challenge. And to some extent, the WTO has to tackle a lot of the issues included in this paradigm. I told you that trade is great, and just that you have an idea of what we are talking about. Even if we still have poverty and hunger, let's say in Africa. In the last reduction in hunger in Africa, in Central Africa over the last 10 years took, for a country like France, to do it in 65 years in the 19th century. Because there was not this possibility to move goods when your people are hungry, move technology, and move machinery, input, and all of this. 20 years of hunger reduction in Asia was 85 years what Europe has to do when it was basically alone in the 19th century, where countries were not cooperating, and so on. So we still have a lot of issues to deal with, but we have managed to achieve it in a very small amount of time because we have been able to move things around and not let people in autarky try to deal with their own problem at their own speed. Still, here it's how this notion of free trade is popular in the literature. And thanks to Google and all this numerization of at least 200 years of books and different writing, we can see how this notion is popular. How much, if you look the percentage in terms of words in this corpus of knowledge, how this free trade things has evolved. And you see that it's going up and down. So over time, this is not a smooth path toward the end of history where we will all be happy and globalized under free trade. 200 years ago, people were asking the same question. What is self-sufficiency? Can I really develop England if I import wheat from France? What will be the case for Germany? And we have seen this wave of people saying free trade is good, and like tides, some reflux. And unfortunately, to some extent, and this is quite interesting, that we see that when the ideas start to become less popular, 20 years ago, you start to see change in policies. Basically, when the intellectual dynamism start to fight for an idea, step by step, the opposite side win. And at the same time that you have this decline, you will see conflict. Okay? The less integrated the world is, the more conflict you will see. You will see shutdown in the 1817 with the war in Europe between France and Prussia. You will see the First World War, you will see the Second World War. So we are not just talking about a better economic welfare. The fact that countries are interdependent is a source of peace. If countries are separated, doesn't trade, you have a lot of opportunity to get conflicts. But there is this general feeling that the world is not working, globalization is not working. So here you have this ignorance study done by the people from Gapminder Foundation, and ask people that have university degree in the UK, do you think that the proportion of world population living in extreme poverty has increased or decreased? And you see that even in the UK, people with university degree will say 55%, for 55% of them, poverty has increased globally. The reality is that over the last 30 years, the extreme poverty rate globally has fallen from 35% to 10%. But the perception about the world is different. And this is why we have this type of book, to bring evidence in the debate. Just to remind sometimes simple facts, but that are key. Here you can see, if you look at news, if we import food, we are going to be sick. And you start to see this type of headlines. And they will quote even a new paper by the CDC looking about how this food imports can lead to more outbreak of disease. But what is a key figure of the paper is that 20% of the food consumed in the US is imported. Just 5% of the case of foodborne disease are linked to imports. You see the asymmetry? People say, okay, if we import food, we are going to be sick. The situation is today, because we have also more control on imports, the proportion of case to be sick when you eat import food is lower than domestic food. But the perception is different. And we need evidence. And we need evidence to explain this to policymakers, but hopefully some of them are well aware of this, but also to the general audience. So in this book, we try to tackle some of these fears and also to go in the detail of the negotiation to explain why countries can find agreement or cannot find agreements, and how they can find agreement to have this better, healthy trading system that have delivered so much, and that we should not forget about what it has delivered. We are going to see that we want countries to cooperate, and we need disciplines. If there is no rules, it's very difficult to implement cooperation. But we want government to agree to each other, but also to be able to agree with their constituency at home. And so we have these two levels of political economic games that make this negotiation so difficult. And we need to find a way to solve this. So in this book, you have 13 chapters that are basically organized around two main topics. One is really to see how the global community has tried to deliver a new round of liberalization to strengthen existing rules within what was called the Doha Development Agenda, a round of negotiation that had been launched in 2001. We are in 2017. This round has not been concluded. It has delivered just maybe a teeny fraction of what was the ambition initially about. but the WTO system is still alive and is still maintaining important outcome for the world. So the first part of the book will enter in how this negotiation have proceeded, what were the details of the negotiation, but also why they have failed, and what we can learn. The second part of the book is another preoccupation of policymakers. What's happened when you have prices that go up or down? All these short-term crises. Policymakers have to act to respond to what people want them to do. But the way they are going to do it can be a big source of problem for their neighbors. They can threaten the global system, and in many cases, they can even hurt their country. And you have a few chapters that explain what works, what don't work, what country can do, because countries can do a lot of things today. And sometimes people say, oh, WTO forbids you to do this. It's wrong in many cases. But the second part of the book. So we have a wonderful panel of experts and co-authors, that some of them are here. And I will conclude just by saying that in addition to the work done by all these wonderful people, we'd like to thank all the support we had from IFPRI and the communication division in terms of editing, in terms of improving the quality of the book, in terms of also the peer review process of IFPRI that helped to deliver a product that we like, you will enjoy. Thank you.